Well, it's April 7th, and I'm heading west out of Lexington, Kentucky, heading toward Louisville. It's about 80 miles away. I'm going to meet up with my friend Matt, and then we're going to head up into Indiana, camp out at the Hoosier National Forest, and then watch the eclipse on April the 8th. So this is pretty typical of the sort of horse farms you get riding around Lexington, central Kentucky. It's rather scenic. If you haven't been around here, it's really nice. Kind of get used to it if you're here, but wasn't a bad trip to Louisville, except I had a woman pull out in front of me. She was on her phone, just I guess looking for cars, and didn't see me, and just pulled right out in front of me around Frankfort. So a little Lexington side of Frankfort, and had to slam on the brakes and avoid hitting her. She ended up stopped sideways in my lane. Anyway, after meeting up with Matt, what we're seeing here is riding northeast out of Louisville. Rather than riding through downtown Louisville to get out of town, we rode well out of the way, but a much more scenic route. So this is northeast, heading up to cross the bridge over the Ohio River into Madison, Indiana. So this is just northern Kentucky. The goal of this trip is to meet up with our friend Guy. I picked a spot that's on the path of the Eclipse totality, but well away from people as much as I could. So the goal is to meet up with Guy the next day after camping out at night, watch the eclipse, and then ride back home on the 8th. So this is just an overnight trip. But it's kind of pretty through southern Indiana here, or through northern Kentucky here. A lot of Kentucky looks like this. Pretty much pick a back road, you can't go wrong. I tend to think of it in terms of interstates, which are a fast way to get somewhere, and then the roads that used to be what we use for interstates, like US 60 and 25, major secondary roads. And those are generally nice in Kentucky if you like riding just a little bit and then standing up for 35 miles an hour through town, seeing all these little towns. And then there are these tertiary roads like the one we're on here, just winding through rural Kentucky. And some of them are really twisty, sometimes you get some forest. It's always a mixed bag, but I don't think I've ever had a really bad trip. It's always very good or excellent riding these little tertiary roads. So whenever possible, I try and route my GPS through these. If I'm in a hurry, I'll take major secondary roads like US 60 to get somewhere, and it's still scenic. And I try and avoid highways at all costs. But so Matt and I are tooling along through here, and soon we'll be crossing the Ohio River. So this is the bridge from northern Kentucky into southern Indiana, into Madison, Indiana. Beautiful weather today. The 10 days preceding this, it rained every day. And then it cleared up for 2 days for the eclipse, and then it rained for another 5 or 6 days after that. So couldn't have been happier with the weather. I was glad to have it rain all those days. I just kept thinking, just get it out of your system, and as long as it's good for the eclipse. And miraculously, for early April, the weather was just gorgeous. You could see that blue sky. We had sunny weather and very pleasant camping weather. It's a little cool at night, but just really a great trip. Nearly perfect weather for the eclipse trip and for camping. So now we're in southern Indiana. So this is riding through southern Indiana. We're heading north for a little while, and then we're going to angle back to the northwest to get to the Hoosier National Forest. But southern Indiana is a lot like northern Kentucky, just on the other side of the river. Here we've arrived at the northern part of the Hoosier National Forest. The Hoosier National Forest is actually pretty tall north to south. It goes down to the Ohio River, and this is up fairly close to Bloomington. So this is what our campsite looked like. It's an interesting campsite. These were designated dispersed camping sites. Usually we like to do dispersed camping where you go out in the woods, just kind of find someplace nobody's ever been or whatever, get as far away from people as possible. These sites were on a gravel road, and they were designated sites, but this one had bullards put up so that cars couldn't drive up in here. I guess it was for bicycle camping or something. We just rode our motorcycles back up in there, and we had plenty of nice trees to hang our hammocks. This brown hammock was my original Hennessy hammock. I brought it for Matt so he could try it. the titanium colored rain flies over my new four-season hammock. So we both hammock camped, and it rained that night. We were fairly comfortable in our hammocks. It's a little on the chilly side, but we brought good sleeping bags for it. I had some Thai noodles, Thai peanut noodles that I had made ahead of time, dried ingredients, so just add water. Matt was sitting in his hammock. These hammocks you can sit in them sort of like recliners, so you don't need to bring a camp chair. That's kind of nice. So there you can see Matt at night. I hit the flash, so I'm looking out underneath my rainfly sitting in mine. Here's the path of totality. That dark pink in the center and that little red dot's approximately where we were. So we rode up to be as close to the center of totality. So we had 3 minutes and 50 seconds of totality, which was really cool. And there's where Matt and I arrived. You can see it's starting to get dark here. And Guy's car's parked over there in about 100 yards down the road on the right. It was really weird though, because the camera and the human eye's perception, as it gets linearly darker and darker, you don't even notice that your eyes adjust, the camera adjusts, and then just that last few seconds when it goes into darkness, suddenly it gets very dark very quickly. And then out on the horizon, you can see that bright light on the horizon. It's kind of like a sunset all the way around you, but because the sun isn't down on the edge of the horizon being filtered through the atmosphere, it's hitting the earth straight on like noonday, so you don't get that red filtering, but it's still bright all the way around, but it's dark where we were. There were some, I guess you'd say stars came out. I think it was actually planets, probably, who knows. But there's Guy and Matt looking up at the coming eclipse, and it was like I'd seen in pictures before. This is my first total solar eclipse. Crossed that off my bucket list, but it really looked just like all the pictures I've seen. So I took a really crappy cell phone picture that turned out to be absolutely nothing. But my friend Guy took this picture, and this is just as the moon is starting to move away and let the sun shine through again. Down the bottom right corner, you can see the sun just starting to peek in. Here's a image I took off the internet. It was really neat to see the corona of the sun, but without burning out your eyeballs by looking into a fusion reaction 93 miles away, 93 million miles away. So here we are crossing the bridge back into Louisville, kind of a sped up version. That's the 2nd Street Bridge. There was a really bad wreck on there a couple of weeks before where a semi-truck ended up hanging off the bridge because of bad Louisville driving, and there's a lot of that. It's always been bad, but it seems to be getting worse. Louisville's getting a lot of big city problems, like all big cities. I just don't like driving through Louisville at all. I didn't want to come through Louisville on the way back. I wanted to go back the way we came. So riding through rural Indiana, but GPS was saying it's going to be about 40 minutes longer that way, and Matt didn't want to do that. I think mainly because he didn't want me riding home in the dark after a long trip like that. But it turned out that there was a big wreck with 2 big trucks and at least 1 car, so a bunch of wreckers and stuff. So that held us up a long time around Paoli, just the Louisville, just south of Paoli. And then no sooner we get through there, we rode about 15 minutes or so, and then we ran into construction traffic where a 2-lane road was down into 1 lane and all the traffic was backed up. Overall, it ended up taking about an extra hour, so it would have been faster to have gone the much longer route through southern Indiana, but we didn't know that. But yeah, Louisville's just stupid driving, rude driving, and dangerous driving. And now, riding through downtown Louisville, there's a big parking garage over to my left, about 200 yards, and the smell of urine coming off that was almost overpowering on a motorcycle. I don't think I'd want to live in Louisville or any big city for that matter. But you can see by the length of the shadows it's starting to get dark now, and I've still got 80 miles of riding ahead of me. So after I cut Matt loose, rode pretty much right to his neighborhood, I just continued on east for another 80 miles. I ended up, it was mostly in the dark, and in Frankfort, some woman pulled out in front of me in a pickup truck, and I had to emergency brake and swerve around her. I need to get some big lights. I've got some amber LED lights. I need to get those hooked up. Here's the basic trip. So I left on the 7th and rode west to Louisville, where I met Matt, and then we did a little bit of repacking and stuff, talking about the trip, and then took off, headed northeast, crossed the river, and then headed north through southern Indiana, and then back west to our campsite in the Hoosier National Forest. Then we rode up the next morning to watch the eclipse, and then we rode back through Paoli rather than going back the red route to the east that I wanted to take. And then got back to Louisville. Wasn't too bad. Also, on the way home from there, I've still got that 80-mile section to the east of there. In addition to the woman in the pickup truck in Frankfort, a teenage possum rambled across the road right in front of me, and I had to do some emergency braking. And I got back to, it was close to Midway. It's about halfway between Lexington and Louisville. But other than that, it was an uneventful trip home. It was a great trip. Really enjoyed seeing Matt and Guy, hanging out with them, seeing the eclipse. I'm a big nerd, so crossing the eclipse off my bucket list was great. And looking forward to more trips. I'm hoping I can talk Matt into going on several more camping trips, moto camping trips this summer. I got home about 9:20 p.m., 430 miles on the odometer for the trip, and nearly perfect weather, no incidents, just a really great time, and looking forward to the next one.